Thanks, Brennan. Okay, we're going to get started this morning. Welcome. And for those of you who join us this morning or in your pajamas on Thursday, welcome to everybody. We're going to be in Numbers this morning in our Sunday school hour. Last week we had a report from our missionary, the Cameron family, the Pryor family. He is Cameron Pryor. Was here to give us a report on their missionary activity, so that was a good time. But we're going to get back to our study here. And so we need to do a little bit of a review because you've slept a little bit more than normal since 2 weeks ago, right? And so in this chunk of Numbers, at this end of Numbers, the main confrontation, the main conflict that is presented actually centers around Balaam, right? And the story that had several chapters worth of material there. Some messianic prophecies that took place there, as well as some near prophecies that took place regarding Israel's success against their enemies as they were wandering in the desert. And then chapter 25 comes and gives us kind of a simultaneous record of what was taking place while the events involving Balaam and his prophecies were going on. We have a temporal description here in chapter 25. It says, while that was taking place, verse 1 says, while Israel remained at Shittim, the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab. For they invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel joined themselves to Baal of Peor, and the Lord was angry against Israel. So this wasn't just your normal fornication problem that we see throughout the Old Testament recurring. This was a temple situation. They were engaging in worship that involved this level of fornication. And of course, this is where we ought to stop and realize that there is a substance involved, not a substance, a person involved in idolatrous worship normally. Normally, when we think about idolatry, we engage it as if the alternative to worshiping God is worshiping something that isn't real. And that's not what these people were doing. And I've told you before that I think the world in ages past was a different place when you looked around, right? When you look around, what's the big deal lately? You hear about it on TV all the time. All of these mass shootings happen, right? And what do you always hear about? Well, we never had any idea. Well, half the time it's we never had any idea. Half the time it's that dude was weird and we were just waiting for that to happen. But you don't know, right? You look and you go, well, if I had to guess, I'd say we're okay. Or I don't know over here, and if I had to guess, oh boy, I bet you that guy's weird. That guy's going to do something violent. I think especially in the patriarchal period, going back even before this, I don't think they had as much problem knowing who and what the supernatural beings were. And so when you have an idol, I don't think that's a creation of somebody's imagination. There is a form there that somebody had in visual form they saw that was revealed to them. And normally it would be what we would call a demon or an angelic being, a fallen angelic being. I think that's reasonable to say that. And I'm not the only one. I'm not just pulling that out of the air. Sometimes people think I'm just imagining things. But I think that's correct. And so they are not joining themselves to nothing, in other words, right? Because that's the only way to make sense of this passage. Why would God be angry if they were joining themselves to nothing, right? Because there was a remedy. Y'all understand this. Americans have a hard time with this, understanding. There was a remedy, right? If you had intercourse with somebody that wasn't your wife, you were supposed to buy her, right? You were supposed to pay her dad and take her into your home, and it was supposed to be your wife. Easy peasy, right? Y'all do remember that part of the Bible? That's not the way we do it, but that was the way they did it. That didn't make God angry particularly, necessarily. But engaging in temple prostitution did. Worshiping Baal, serving Baal, that did. And so Yahweh tells Moses, he says, take all the leaders of the people and execute them in broad daylight before Yahweh. so that the fierce anger of Yahweh may turn away from Israel. Now understand this, they're not, we joke, right? There's a saying that floats around in my circles, right? It's a shame how few politicians are hanged, right? It is. It's a shame. Most of them deserve it. Both sides. Most of them deserve it. Most of them are criminals, right? But what God is saying here is execute your uncles. Execute your nephews, your sons, your grandsons. I don't think any of them are old enough at this point to have great-grandsons. There are no exceptions to be made, and I'm not going to strike them down for you, right? Like when the sons of Korah situation, right, that God opened up the earth, God sent the snakes, and they all had to look at the brass serpent. I'm not going to do this for you. You are going to do it. You take these people who worship Baal and join themselves to Baal in the middle of my holy assembly. You take them, and you be jealous for my glory, and you kill them. That's how serious that was. Right? It was the same when Scripture tells us that when you have a rebellious son, right? It's not your neighbor that's supposed to take your rebellious son before the temple and say, this kid needs to be stoned, or this man generally. The parents are supposed to do that. You're supposed to take ownership of the obedience that took place in your own family, right? So they're supposed to do that. So then the apex of this conflict, right, was when one of the Israelite men brought in one of these temple prostitutes into the assembly, into the presence of Yahweh, right? And Phinehas, we had a picture last week. Brendan, did you get my PowerPoint in time? I have a picture of this somewhere. If you didn't, it's cool. I'm a caveman anyway. I forget that I have it half the time. Oh, should I skip all the way down, or can you skip all the way down for me? I actually have this app. It's my caveman app. Hold on. Let's see here. Where are we going? Okay, that's where we are today. Here's the picture. The artist rendering here. I don't know when this was. This is Phinehas taking his spear and simultaneously piercing the man who brought the Midianite woman and the woman herself with one spear. There's a word floating around the Twitterverse regarding pastors. A lot of people, right, that say that we're supposed to be winsome. So y'all know how I feel about the word nice. I think the word nice is bogus. The Bible tells me to be loving. The Bible tells me to be kind. There is no such command to be nice, because nice is different, right? Winsome is just another way of saying being nice. Do you think Phinehas here is being winsome to the Midianites? We find out later this is the king of Midian's daughter, by the way. We find that out. Cosby, whatever. That's who was just stabbed through. He's so nice. He's nice. Winsome. All right. So we go down here, right? God honors Phinehas, by the way. Skipping down here to verse 11, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, has turned away my wrath from the sons of Israel, in that he was jealous with my jealousy among them, so that I did not destroy the sons of Israel in my jealousy. Therefore, behold, I give him my covenant of peace. And it shall be for him and his descendants after him a covenant of a perpetual priesthood, because he was jealous for his God and made atonement for the sons of Israel. The priestly line just got narrowed, by the way, is what happened. Phinehas' family became the line of the high priest. Now the name of the slain man of Israel, who was slain with the Midianite woman, was Zimri, the son of Salu, a leader of a father's household among the Simeonites. The name of the Midianite woman who was slain was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur, who was head of the people of a father's household in Midian. So one of the chieftains there. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, be hostile to the Midianites and strike them, for they have been hostile to you with their tricks, with which they have deceived you in the affair of Peor and in the affair of Cosbi, the daughter of the leader of Midian, their sister, who was slain on the day of the plague because of Peor. So they're supposed to strike down the Midianites, right? This is not, in their wanderings, they were supposed to do that. Be hostile to them. They were their cousins, by the way. You remember going all the way back, the Midianites were essentially descendants of Abraham. I mean, they were cousins. Jethro, the high priest of Midian, was Moses' father-in-law. So there was some overlap here, right? They were family, in a sense. And I've said this before, and everybody in El Paso looks at me like I'm a nut. But we all need to understand that whenever we use the word family, we do not necessarily mean friend. People in your family can be your enemy. People in the church family could be your enemies. We'll talk about that later in the passage in 2 Thessalonians. Family doesn't necessarily mean friend, and in this case, the fact that Midian had some overlap with family does not make them friends, because friends don't do this to you. They don't send in the daughters of Midian to join you to Baal. Anyway, so they don't do that. So let's go on to chapter 26. Now this is important because, see, I told you I'm a caveman. I have this super duper app right here in front of me, and I forget to click the thing. I have to get used to it. I'm teaching a class for Schaefer Seminary this semester, and it's all like on Zoom and stuff, and I am scared to death of that thing. I really have I take classes on a platform like that for my PhD, for my doctorate or whatever, and that works out okay, but I really feel for the guys that have been teaching for like 20 or 30 years in a brick and mortar classroom, and then all of a sudden have to figure out 14 different little doodads to make it work. So chapter 26 is this. Let's just read the first verse. Then it came about after the plague, which is an interesting way to describe the commandment of Yahweh there. When you think of a plague, right, you think of leprosy. The modern person, I've heard some sermons calling COVID a plague. But that's the kind of thing you think of, right? Like boils or lesions, like on the Philistines, or the rats. Remember that story? The rats and the boils for the Philistines. They sent the Ark of the Covenant back with little rats and little boils on it because they're pagans and dumb. God told them to slay everyone who engaged in temple prostitution. That plague. That Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saying, "Take a census of all the congregation of the sons of Israel from 20 years old and upward by their father's household, whoever is able to go out to war in Israel." So what has happened after the plague? Where are we in the history of Israel as an post-Exodus nation? A familial nation. Not like us, right? Because otherwise I'd go to the Cadillac dealerships in DFW and say, "Hey, you guys are Meiers. You mind sharing a little inheritance," right? Yeah, the guys that own all those Cadillac dealerships in Dallas. Y'all not been to Dallas? Never seen the Cadillac dealerships? No problem. It's a familial nation. Where are we? We're wandering around the desert, right? Why are we wandering around in the desert? Because most of them are a bunch of chickens. They were cowards, right? Except for Joshua and Caleb. They came back and said, "We see ourselves as grasshoppers in their sight." And again, there were giants in the land. They were big. They were huge. They were like grasshoppers in their sight, physically speaking. What did God say? You're going to wander around in the desert. You're going to wander around in the desert. Other places tell us you're going to wander around in the desert and your robe isn't going to wear out and your sandals aren't going to wear out and you're always going to have food, but you are going to wander around in the desert. Until what? Until all of that generation's corpses drop dead in the desert and dried up essentially. It's a little bit of a paraphrase, but not much. He says, till your corpses drop in the desert 3 or 4 times when he reiterates that promise. Now, to me, that sounds like they had kind of an option, huh? I mean, they could wander around until they died of something, right? You guys from Texas? Don't lie to me now, because I have a test I'm going to give you. Don't lie to me now. If you're from Texas and you don't know about this scene, right? Lonesome Dove, right? Jake Spoon gets a little mesquite thorn in his thumb, I think it was, and he almost dies from it. Just from mosquito. Recently, I had a mesquite thorn in my arm. I think I told you all this story. My 2 middle fingers on my left hand were virtually paralyzed for a week because of a mesquite thorn. You can die of all sorts of things out in the desert, can't you? If you're wandering around in the desert. How did they choose to die? How did we get to the point of all their corpses falling in the desert and rotting? Hey, there's a Baal temple with some pretty chicks in it. Let's go join the sons of Israel to Baal of Peor and get wiped out by our neighbors by the sword. That's how that happened. Wouldn't it be better to die with a mesquite thorn in your toe? Maybe. Live a long and happy life and have an accident. Oops. Fell off a cliff. Be better than having to stare your grandson in his eye while he strikes you dead for engaging in temple prostitution, I think. Right? Or vice versa. Maybe worse the other way. A very frank discussion with my sons at one time. I have 5 sons. And I think that every father of sons ought to have a conversation like this. I don't know if it happens. But I had to reveal to them at some point when they could understand this. I said, boys, there are circumstances that exist in this world that I will kill each and every one of you. Remember this, boys? I'm hoping they never occur, but you need to understand this. That there are circumstances, and I know what they are, and I can tell you, and they usually have to do with how you treat my wife. If you cross the line is crossed. There is no man on earth that will be allowed to cross that line. Period. That's the line we're talking about here. It doesn't matter if it was your son, your grandson, your favorite uncle. That's the line that was crossed. So that's how it came about. After the plague, all those guys were dead in the desert. All of the cowards who happened to be also those who were tempted by Baal of Peor and the temple of prostitution. Funny how that works. The cowards are also the ones who are easily deceived. That's why when Scripture tells us, act like a man, that does not mean put on the deepest V-neck skinny jeans you can and sip your soy latte. That's not what that means. Act like a man means embracing the divine gift of aggressiveness and violence to a certain degree that you have. Right? Yes? You don't have to agree, but I'm right and you're wrong if you don't. That's how it is. It's hard to tell somebody act like a man now in a world where we can have a movie called What is a Woman? A man is not just an ugly woman, by the way. Yes? Can you imagine? If the temple prostitutes and the Baal of Peor were ugly, we wouldn't even have this story. Take a census. So now we can take the census. Take the census of all the congregation of the sons of Israel from 20 years old and upward by their father's household, whoever is able to go out to war in Israel. Everybody else is wiped out. The cowards who ended up getting deceived and engaging in prostitution are gone. So Moses and Eleazar the priest spoke with them in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, saying, a census of the people shall be taken from 20 years old and upward, as Yahweh has commanded Moses. Okay, so now we have a list. This is almost like an inventory. Okay, we're going to read this because there are notes of note here, but we're mostly going to read it. Okay, now the sons of Israel who came out of the land of Egypt were Reuben, Israel's firstborn, the sons of Reuben, of Hanok, the family of the Hanokites, of Palu, the family of the Paluites, of Hezron, the family of the Hezronites, of Carmi, the family of the Carmites. These are the families of the Reubenites. And those who were numbered of them were 43,730. There may be nations in the world that are smaller than that these days. I'm not sure. There's some pretty small ones out there. That's a big family, isn't it? I think you have trouble getting everybody around the table for Thanksgiving already, right? The son of Palu, Eliab. The sons of Eliab, Nemuel, and Dathan, and Abiram. You remember those names? Those are the Dathan and Abiram who were called by the congregation who contended against Moses and Aaron in the company of Korah when they contended against Yahweh, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up along with Korah when that company died, when the fire devoured 250 men, so that they became a warning. The sons of Korah, however, did not die. Meaning his actual biological sons were still able to embrace an inheritance that they were promised in the land. So this is why it's important not to spiritualize things, allegorize things in the Old Testament. Most people take this Exodus experience as some sort of allegory for the way that we get to go to heaven when we die, and it has nothing to do with that, right? The whole thing, the whole picture. Entering into rest, they go to Hebrews and they screw up Hebrews 2 because they've screwed up the Old Testament. Korah was temporarily judged along with these 250 men, Dathan and Abiram among them. But when we read about, so his name was not wiped out on the earth, right? So we read about that. Edom, we talked about Edom. When Edom gets wiped out on off the face of the earth, where is the nation of Edom today? There isn't one. Tyre and Sidon, and there are numerous ites out there in the Canaanites. Actually, all of the Canaanites were supposed to have been wiped off the face of the earth, never to have an inheritance or a heritage or a nation ever again. That's different, isn't it? Korah received temporal judgment, but his sons were not removed from the face of the earth. His name was not wiped off the face of the earth. They're still in the census. Because in Israel, people were not put to death for the sins of their father. Okay, so this is important. The sons of Simeon, according to their families, of Nemuel, the family of the Nemuelites. Anybody want to read these names for me? Of Jamin, the family of the Geminites. Of Jachin, the family of the Jachinites. Of Zerah, the family of the Zerahites. Of Shaul, the family of the Shaulites. These are the families of the Simeonites, 22,200. Remember, that was one of the ones that was struck down by Phinehas, was a Simeonite. The sons of Gad, according to their families, of Zephon, the family of the Zephonites, of Haggi, the family of the Haggites, of Shuni, the family of the Shunites, of Ozni, the family of the Oznites, of Eri, the family of the Erites, of Arod, the family of the Arodites, of Areli, the family of the Arelites. These are the families of the sons of Gad, according to those who were numbered of them, 40,500. The sons of Judah were and Onan, but and Onan died in the land of Canaan. It's another story for another day, apparently, in Numbers. The sons of Judah, according to their families, were of Shelah, the family of the Shelonites, of Perez, the family of the Perizzites, of Zerah, the family of the Zerahites. The sons of Perez were of Hezron, the family of the Hezronites, of Hamul, the family of the Hamulites. These are the families of Judah, according to those who were numbered of them, 76,500. The sons of Issachar, according to their families, of Tola, the family of the Tolaites, of Puvah, the family of the Punites, of Jashub, the family of the Jashubites, of Shimron, the family of the Shimronites. These are the families of Issachar, according to those who were numbered of them, 64,300. The sons of Zebulun, according to their families, of Sered, the family of the Seredites, of Elon. You didn't know Elon was a Bible name, did you? That's not the Elon you know, is it? Elon, the family of the Elonites. I doubt he was named for this Elon, but Of Jaleel, the family of the Jalielites. These are the families of the Zebulunites, according to those who were numbered, of them 60,500. The sons of Joseph. Now remember that Joseph has a double inheritance, right? The sons of Joseph, according to their families, Manasseh and Ephraim. The sons of Manasseh, of Machir, the family of the Machirites, and Machir became the father of Gilead. Of Gilead, the family of the Gileadites. These are the sons of Gilead, of Etzer, the family of the Etzerites, of Helek, the family of the Helekites, and of Azriel, the family of the Azrielites, and of Shechem, the family of the Shechemites, and of Shemida, the family of the Shemidites, and of Hefer, the family of the Heferites. It doesn't sound very polite, does it? Call somebody a heifer. It has a whole different meaning. Now this is important to note, verse 33. Now Zelophehad, not just because that's a hard name to say, the son of Hefer, had no sons, but only daughters. And the names of the daughters of Zelophehad were Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. Now if you're a fan of Fiddler on the Roof, all of a sudden you go, 5 daughters? If you haven't watched it, you gotta watch it. Important line. Old movie, great movie. There's something weird here. No offense, ladies. 5 daughters? It happens. I have 5 sons. Some people have 5 daughters. Lord blessed us with one, graced us with one daughter. She loves that. But some people have 5 daughters. Now that comes back up. I just want you to note it. Zelophehad, no sons. He has done nothing wrong. This is not a judgment from God on him. It says, you shall only have daughters. Some people go too far with this, but this is the reality. This is the fact. These are the families of Manasseh, and those were numbered of them were 52,700. These are the sons of Ephraim, according to their families, of Shuthelah, the family of the Shuthelahites, of Becher, the family of the Becherites, of Tahan, the family of the Tahanites. These are the sons of Shuthelah, of Aaron, the family of the Aaronites. These are the families of the sons of Ephraim, according to those who were numbered of them 32,500. These are the sons of Joseph, according to their families. The sons of Benjamin, according to their families. Of Bela, the family of the Belaites. Of Ashbel, the family of the Ashbelites. Of Ahiram, the family of the Ahiramites. Of Shephupham, the family of the Shuphamites. Of Hupham, the family of the Huphamites. The sons of Bela were Ard and Naaman. Of Ard, the family of the Ardites. Of Naaman, the family of the Naamites. These are the sons of Benjamin, according to their families, and those who were numbered of them were 45,600. These are the sons of Dan, according to their families, of Shuham, the family of the Shuhamites. These are the families of Dan, according to their families. All the families of Shuhamites, according to those who were numbered of them, were 64,400. The sons of Asher, according to their families, of Imnah, the family of the Imnites, of Ishvi, the family of the Ishvites, of Beriah, the family of the Beriites. Of the sons of Beriah, of Heber, the family of the Heberites, of Malchiel, the family of the Malchielites. The name of the daughter of Asher was Sarah. These are the families of the sons of Asher, according to those who were numbered of them, 53,400. The sons of Naphtali, according to their families. Of Jaziel, the family of the Jazielites. Of Guni, the family of the Gunites. Of Jatzer, the family of the Jezerites. Of Shalem, the family of the Shilemites. These are the families of Naphtali according to their families, and those who were numbered of them were 45,400. There are those who were numbered of the sons of Israel, 601,730. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, among these the land shall be divided for an inheritance according to the number of names. Okay, so we've got them all counted up. There's 601,730 people who can go out to war, essentially. That was the census, right? There's multiple different ways that they took the census. Yahweh speaks to Moses, among these the land shall be divided for an inheritance according to the number of names. So they're going to divide up the property. We have such a thing in Texas called an undivided interest in property. People think that they're doing their kids a favor. And they have 5 children and they have 100 acres and they give them an undivided interest in 100 acres and then nobody can ever sell any of it. That's not what's happening here. That is a divided interest. They get GPS coordinates, they get meets and bounds, and they get land, and this is their land, right? But this is how it's divided up. To the larger group, you shall increase their inheritance. And to the smaller group, you shall diminish their inheritance. Each shall be given their inheritance according to those who are numbered of them. In other words, if you have 32,603, or what, I don't remember the numbers exactly, you're going to get less land than those people who have 72,400 people. That makes a little bit of sense, right? How do you get to be one of the largest clans in Israel wandering around in the desert? Anybody? Thoughts? I mean, I'm not asking you where babies come from. I know where that happens. But how do you get to be one of the largest clans in Israel based on the narrative that we've been reading throughout Numbers? Now you're thinking, the fewer of your sons that engage in temple prostitution in the temple of Baal, the bigger your family is. Isn't that important, guys? Because sin is bad for us, and the wages of it is death. Right? You try to, you disciple and discipline your sons so that they don't fall into the rebellion of Korah, so they don't fall by the various plagues, so that they don't get killed because they were stupid and went up against the Canaanites after God said, you got to wander around in the desert for 40 years. Remember that? They said, oh, Moses, it wasn't that bad. We really want the land. We really want the land. We'll go up in battle array. And no, Moses stayed back with the priests in the tabernacle and said, y'all go if you want, but you're going to lose. What effect does that have? Isn't it bad enough that your son gets slaughtered or your grandson or your nephews or whatever else and your family is diminished because you failed largely? But it impacts the eternal, because this is a land seed blessing forever, Abrahamic covenant. The land that is to be divvied up here among the families and the clans of Israel is a permanent inheritance. Land, seed, blessing forever. Fathers, the way that we raise our children can have that kind of impact for generations and generations. It did in Israel. It was important. We've stressed that, right? This generation, the generation that died, what was their only job while they were wandering around? Did they need to keep their sword sharp? Probably, because they were going to get attacked while they were wandering around. But they didn't need to keep it sharp to go into Canaan. They didn't need to be prepared for conquest. Their one job, the only job that mattered at that point, was to train their children and to make sure that they knew the promises that God had given them and what they were going to be required to do so they didn't make the same mistake and end up in the same boat. They needed to be prepared for conquest in the land and be prepared to embrace the inheritance they were given. That was their one job, and it had far-reaching consequences. God determined that their inheritance will be divided between the larger and the smaller proportionately. 57, these are those who are numbered of the Levites according to their families. The Levites are a special case. Remember, they don't get farms. The family of the Gershonites of Kohath, the family of the Kohathites of Merari, the family of the Merarites. These are the families of Levi, the family of the Libnites, the family of the Hebronites, the family of the Malites. The family of the Mushites, or I'm not sure which way is better to say that. The family of the Korahites. Kohath became the father of Amram. The name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, who was born to Levi in Egypt. And she bore to Amram Aaron and Moses and their sister Miriam. And to Aaron were born Nadab and Abihu. Remember those names? Strange fire. Eleazar and Ithamar, 4 sons. But Nadab and Abihu died when they offered strange fire before Yahweh. Those who were numbered of them were 23,000, every male from a month old and upward, for they were not numbered among the sons of Israel, since no inheritance was given to them among the sons of Israel. These are those who were numbered by Moses and Eleazar the priest, who numbered the sons of Israel in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. But among those there was not a man of those who were numbered by Moses and Aaron the priest, who numbered the sons of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For the Yahweh had said of them, they shall surely die in the wilderness. And not a man was left of them, except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. Not a one. Why are numbers important? Because God makes a lot of promises concerning numbers. Right? There are a lot of numbers. And when God said they will all drop dead in the wilderness, he meant that, with the only exceptions being the ones that he stated, Caleb and Joshua. So the numbers are important. And it's important also just at a very basic level. You realize that there are a lot of people that don't believe that one man wrote this, that even a small group of men wrote the Pentateuch. They don't believe that any of this can be historically reliable because they can't figure. I mean, the math is actually quite simple to get to these kinds of numbers for people, especially in an agrarian society, especially in that setting, right? But it is important for historical reliability that we know that it wasn't 600 people that went into Israel, but it was 601,730. Is that the right number? Somewhere up here. Yeah, 601,730 people in the army. That's pretty big. Anybody remember how many? I mean, like full strength, including reservists and everything. I think, were we at 1.2 million or something? United States. In that ballpark, full strength. This is half of that. And they're not trying to police the whole world with it. Right? They're just trying to take a little postage stamp size of promised land out of the Middle East with 601,730 people. It's not only historically reliable, historically accurate, it's historically reasonable that they could do that, especially, I mean, aside from the supernatural aspect of this, aside from being much, much smaller than the giants who are in the land. So this is important, which is why we read every word, because every word is inspired and accurate. People ask me why I do that sometimes. That's why. Chapter 27, well, I think I just had one slide for that whole section because it was a number. Here we go. There is a picture for everything on the internet, huh? All right. Then the daughters, the 5 daughters. The daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, the Hepherite. Can you imagine calling somebody a Hepherite? Oh, well. The son of Hepher, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, of the families of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, came near. And these are the names of his daughters, Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, and Milcah, and Tirzah. You know, we have a person in Texas history named I'm a Hog, right? Very well known. Kind of like Hoglah. I'm like, why would you do that? I'm a hog. Poor lady. Didn't look anything like a hog. Anyway, these are the 5 daughters of Zelophehad, of the family of Joseph, right? So this is the family that nearly single-handedly is responsible not only for the preservation of the sons that created this nation, but the family and the heritage that Joseph created in Egypt was the one under which this family of 70-something people turned into a nation that can field an army of 601,730 people. That's impressive. But Zelophehad had no sons. And in the ancient Near East, that presented a particular problem, right? Because Joseph was promised an inheritance in the land, right? They were said, take my bones out of this place and bury me in the promised land. He was that focused on the promise that was to come and the inheritance that was to come, that he himself would receive, right? Jesus promises that God is not the God of the dead, but the God of the living. Everyone to whom God has promised one is not only going to receive it in the philosophical sense in his progeny, but they were going to receive it themselves in the resurrection. So Zelophehad has no sons. So he has 5 daughters. They stood before Moses and before Eleazar the priest and before the leaders and all the congregation at the doorway of the tent of meeting, saying, Our father died in the wilderness, yet he was not among the company of those who gathered themselves together against Yahweh in the company of Korah, but he died in his own sin, and he had no sons. In other words, he wasn't a special case. His name was not to be wiped off the face of the planet. His heritage was not to be subsumed into somebody else's. And he wasn't just supposed to send his daughters off to become a part of another tribe and have no inheritance for his progeny in the future, his descendants. So they're saying this is a situation. Now, the Old Testament gets a pretty bad rap when it comes to excessive patriarchy, toxic masculinity, and a bunch of crap like that. There is nowhere else in the records of the ancient Near East that you're going to have 5 unwed daughters come before the leaders of an entire nation and demand a solution like this. I dare you to find it. I can't find one. 5 daughters, unmarried, come to the doorway of the tent of meeting and say, we have what we think is a problem. Verse 4, why should the name of our father be withdrawn among his family? Because he had no son. Give us a possession among our father's brothers. Now, what was the resolution? Y'all know this. Like the story of Ruth, this comes up. The idea of what's the technical term? Levirate marriage, right? So, like in my case, in Israel, if we have 5 sons instead of 5 daughters, and one of the brothers dies without a son, what's supposed to happen? Brother's supposed to marry her. Doesn't matter if he has 1 wife, 2 wives, 3 wives, he's supposed to marry her. He's supposed to have a son with that wife and raise that son up in his brother's name so that their heritage is not lost. Right? That's the idea. It's not supposed to be his son. It doesn't take an inheritance away from his son, although in the story of Ruth, that is a problem. That had started to take place, that the nearest kinsman, remember, wouldn't marry Ruth because he was worried about his inheritance going to somebody else's son. So there was some confusion there. That wasn't supposed to happen. It was supposed to be raised with his father's name, his father's inheritance, for the sake of his brother. The 5 daughters. This guy, they're saying he wasn't exceptional. His name wasn't wiped off the planet. He's not supposed to be taken out of their records, as we know, because we have his name, Zelophehad. Get the syllables in the right order. Give us a possession among our father's brothers. So Moses brought their case before Yahweh. Again, a remarkably, shall we use the word progressive in a positive sense? A remarkably progressive process here. I don't like to use the word progressive anymore because you think it's insurance or communism. But isn't it, right? Women didn't have a place. They were property. Property doesn't own property, right? I have a steer showing up next week. I'm going to put him in a pen, but I'm not going to put his name on the title to the property, right? Because he's property. He doesn't own property. Common distinction. In the ancient Near East, no offense, ladies, don't get upset about it. I'm just telling you what it was. Women were property, chattel. That's how it was. In Israel, 5 daughters can come to Moses and say, we believe that Yahweh intends for us to have a possession, to possess our father's possession until there is a male heir raised up in this family. And Moses doesn't fall on the ground laughing and rolling on the ground and be like, you're ridiculous. Are you kidding me? That land's going to the boys. He goes before Yahweh in the tent of meeting and finds a solution. So what is the solution? I don't know. It's a unique situation. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, the daughters of Zelophehad are right. Oh man, we are over time. This is a kind of an intriguing story to me, so we're going to have to pick this up next week. You guys who weren't, don't usually come to Sunday school, you're going to have to come to hear about this. But it's a unique story. So sometimes I give you all some minutes back. Anybody have any questions or comments? Any snide remarks? Accusations of heresy? Good joke? Yes. I'm not sure I'm following you there.
Yeah, so the people that left Egypt, they were young, they had children in the desert.
Right.
They all died, the descendants.
Scripture says in that last section there, it says that none of those who were numbered in Sinai were among those who were numbered in Moab. So there's an age qualification there also. So if they were 3 when the census took place in Sinai, they would not have been counted in the census at Sinai. They weren't counted until later. Does that make sense? So they would not have been subject necessarily to the corpses dropping in the wilderness. Yes? Okay.
So it was like the army age.
This census was the battle array. That's the people who could go out to war was what they counted at that point. He said none of them, because that was actually where the cowardice was made evident, right? Not everybody's wife or daughter had to die in the wilderness. It was all the people who were chicken. Yes? All right, that makes sense? Right. So that's what they recounted in Moab. All right, let's pray. Y'all can ask questions if you have them by any form of communication too, so keep that in mind. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your word. We thank you even for the numbers. We thank you that they are accurate and that your promises are reliable and faithful to those numbers. And we love you for that you are entirely and completely faithful to your promises. And we know that we can rely on that even in our age as the church today. And we thank you for that as well. We love you. In Jesus' name we pray.